A student who takes out $53,000, and that's the average, $53,000 for students attending four-year public universities, will, according to a new study published by the think tank Demos, experience a lifetime loss of wealth in excess of $200,000, fifth of $1,000,000. If you add that up across all of the student debt that you have in the United States, which is over $1 trillion worth, that means that the lifetime wealth loss in America of our students being so in debt is $4 trillion. You recall before Ronald Reagan came into office, about 80% of the cost of tuition was paid for by state, federal, local, and schools, state, federal, local governments and schools, and about 20% was paid for by the students. So you could work your way through school like my wife did as a waitress at Howard Johnson's, like I did as a part-time DJ and pumping gas and working in a Bob's Big Boy on Trowbridge Road in East Lansing. Can't do that anymore because now you got to pay, now students pay 80% of the cost of tuition, and state, local, federal governments and the colleges themselves pay about 20% of the cost of tuition. Created a bit of a mess, a train wreck, you might say. And Neil McCluskey, the Associate Director at the Cato Institute's Center for Educational Freedom, cato.org, thinks he has a solution, and that's to, hey, Neil, welcome to the program.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'm guessing, when libertarians say freedom, I'm guessing what you are saying is your solution to the problem is to say to all those students who need to borrow money to go to school, not that we're going to go back to the pre-Reagan times when most of college education was paid for by governments or by schools, but rather, good luck, Charlie, you're on your own, government's not going to help you out, and go find a bankster.
Well, that's a nice thing about being for freedom is you don't actually have to say, too bad, Charlie. What we see is, for one thing, the federal government's involvement in college has led to massive price inflation. So it's nice that the politicians talk about, well, we're going to give you lots of aid to go to school, but then we see the colleges and universities, both public and private, raise their prices at huge rates.
You are not only confusing correlation with causation, but you're missing the absolute reverse of that. The backing out of government from college tuition. Government used to pay 80% of the cost of college tuition when Ronald Reagan came into office in 1980. Look it up. Right now, government pays about 22% of the cost of college tuition. As government backed out of that, who had to step in? Students. As students had to step in and pay more and more for college, what did they have to do? Borrow. Yes, the government has been helping them borrow, but that's not what's driving the price up. What's driving the price up is the lack of government involvement.
Yeah, but that actually doesn't fit with any of the data.
Certainly does.
What the data shows you is that, first of all, state and local governments, at least for the last 25 years, have, with the exception of the last 2 or 3 years, greatly increased the amount of money they spend on higher education.
Well, that reflects inflation.
It's on a pretty flat trend for 25 years on a per pupil basis. Yet schools have raised their prices at rates far in excess of normal inflation, far in excess of even health care.
My point.
So the data is actually very clear.
My point. They've raised the rates
because the federal government makes sure students can pay it.
Yeah, if the cost of tuition is now being paid by students, because when you say they've raised their rates, they haven't actually raised the amount of money they're getting per student. What they've raised is the amount of that cost of education that is paid for by the student. And yes, that has increased about 4 to 5-fold because government support of that price of tuition has dropped 4 or 5-fold.
Well, let me give you another statistic, because I guess what I gave you already wasn't enough.
Well, going from $16,700 a year to $39,500 a year, I think it's a $22,000 increase. That's the money that used to be paid by government that is now paid by students.
You can break down actually public colleges and universities, and you can say over the last 25 years, yes, you can say that they have lost some money on a per pupil basis. That's largely because enrollment has skyrocketed. But go ahead, and you can take that. So they lose, say for every dollar they lose per pupil, public colleges and universities have raised their prices $2. And so that's with your worst case scenario. It's very clear that the colleges are raising their prices far in excess of what they're losing. Of course, and that doesn't explain private colleges and universities at all, because they weren't getting that public money you're talking about.
No, the private colleges, the for-profit colleges we used to call diploma mills.
Make sure that every student can pay that. The data is it's really very, very clear on this point.
So if this is the case with education, why is it not the case with food?
Because the federal government doesn't say to everybody who's going to buy food, not only will we give you the money for that food, but we'll give you as much money as you need for whatever price that food is.
No, the government's not giving anybody money. It's loaning people money. Food stamps, they're actually giving people money, 40 million of them. The price of food's not going up.
The federal government gives Pell Grants, for one thing. They also give tax credits, usually to generally wealthier people, which should be eliminated. But the important thing is they say, look, you want to go to college, whatever price they want to charge you right now, we'll make sure right now you have the money to pay that. Nobody does that for food. And
so are you suggesting
everybody the way that student aid does?
Are you suggesting that if the federal government got out of the student loan business, that instead of people taking out loans from Bank of America, that they would just stop going to college?
Well, that would all depend on the individual. I think that's something very important to understand.
Well, that's the cornerstone of your argument. I think it's nonsense.
Well, it's not. It's actually basic logic and basic economics. You would see the price of college go down. You would see some people who really weren't sure whether they needed to go to college say, I'm not going to do that. You'd see, right now we have half of people, roughly, who go to college. We don't have great data on this, but roughly half who enroll in college don't finish. You have about a third of people with degrees, or bachelor's degrees, who are in jobs that don't require it. More very clear evidence of massive overconsumption of higher education.
Well, I would argue that the second statistic is conclusive evidence. If you got a third of people who have jobs that don't require a degree, then we've got a problem with our jobs market. And maybe we should be talking about changing our trade policies and bringing some of our jobs back home, so that not only are we doing manufacturing in this country, we're also doing the engineering and support services necessary for that. Number one. And what was your first point?
I don't remember now.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was very insightful.
Yes, no doubt it was.
I can't remember what it is.
But here's a simple question. It used to be in California, and actually in many places across the country, California was the most famous for it. It was the largest. I mean, it was the equivalent of many other countries. It used to be college was free, and until Reagan became governor. Why didn't and so that was 100% support of education. Why didn't that make things go nuts? I mean, everything seemed to be working just fine when college was free. Lincoln started this idea with land-grant colleges. We had free college in the United States for a long, long time.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look at land-grant colleges for over 30 years, they were a complete waste. In fact, I was just reading about this today in the great history of land-grant colleges. So people, in Congress, that'd be great.
There's still over 50 of them.
Nobody used them, and the instruction wasn't useful to most people. And part of that was because people didn't need that to have very
saying Michigan State University was a waste of time?
It certainly was. And if it had been needed,
I think the graduates of that college would disagree with you.
30 years, almost 30 years, of basically wasted time and wasted money.
So let's just say if you're a member of the Lucky Sperm Club, if you were born into Donald Trump or Charles Koch's family, you great, you got opportunity. And if not, you either negotiate with a bankster or don't bother going to college.
Which has also not borne out the history of American education well before there was heavy government involvement.
You mean before Thomas Jefferson created the Free University of Virginia?
The University of Virginia did not do anything.
It was free.
Through the Virginia education system, and he couldn't get the K-12 one because people in Virginia were happy.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Neil McCluskey. You can read all about it at cato.org. Thank you, Neil.
My pleasure.